Hi, this is my story that I'm going to call Tonsils. This is a story about me getting my tonsils out. Growing up as a kid, I would get strep throat and sore throats all the time. So my mom would take me to the doctor and they would say, oh, you just have strep throat, and they would give me an antibiotic and they would send me home and I would take it and it would go away, and then a couple weeks or a couple months later it would come back. So growing up, I always had this problem, and so sore throats and strep throat wasn't a big deal. It was kind of normal to me. So at the beginning of the summer, I got a really bad sore throat. And so I had a flashlight and I was looking in the back of my throat, and I noticed that there were two pink things on the side of my throat that were normally pink that were suddenly really red and puffy, and they had white spots on them. So I was like, Mom, what are these? And she told me they were my tonsils. I was like, oh, okay, well, what do they do? And she told me that they're supposed to block infection. So she said it looked like I either had strep throat or I just had a sore throat or something. And so we went to my doctor and he told me that I didn't have strep throat, that I had probably just been sick and my tonsils were swollen and infected. So I didn't think very much about it because it was just normal to have a sore throat. So I went throughout the summer and my throat hurt quite a bit this summer. And then I came home from a summer camp and I had told my mom that I had looked at my tonsils and there was white stuff in them, but the white stuff had started to come out as chunks into my mouth and down my throat. And it was really gross. So she told me that wasn't normal. So we should go to a ear, nose, and throat doctor. So we set up an appointment and we went in, and I told him what had happened and how I would get sore throats all the time, but these chunks had started coming out of my tonsils, and they were big. They were like the size of a pencil eraser. And that my tonsils were really swollen. So he shined the light in my throat and he looked and he's like, oh yeah, they're infected. He's like, those are just pockets of food that gets stuck in there. And so I thought that sounded really gross. And he told us that I could get them taken out or I could leave them in. It didn't matter either way. So we didn't really know what to do, so we left his office and my mom and I talked, and we read a lot of different things and talked to different people, and we found out that your tonsils get worse as you get older, and things like that would get worse. So obviously mine had already gotten worse from when I was a kid to now, and I didn't want to get any worse because I was tired of having sore throats. So we decided to get him out, so I scheduled the appointment, and the hospital scheduled my surgery for 6:45 in the morning. So we were there, and then we waited for like an hour before they took us back to the surgery prep room. So they finally took us back, and the nurse was really nice and gave me a warm blanket and had me put on the gown and the weird sock things, and she was talking to me, and she could tell I was really nervous because I'd never had surgery before. And so she put the IV in my hand, and we just talked, and then the nurse left and the anesthesiologist came in. And so he came in and we were talking, and I told him I was nervous and that my tonsils were really gross, and he was telling me that his son had the same problem, that he had chunks in his tonsils that would come out and stuff like that. And I asked him, well, why doesn't your son get his tonsils out? And the anesthesiologist said that his son didn't want to deal with the pain of getting them out. Well, then I got really nervous because it sounded like it was horrible and I was going to die because it hurt so bad. And so the anesthesiologist and I walked down the hall, and we went through a couple doors, and then we walked into a room. Well, I looked around, and there were trays with all like the little tools on them, and there were people standing against the wall in scrubs, and they had gloves on, and there was one bed in the middle of the room, and there were bright lights and all kinds of stuff. So I realized I had just walked into the operating room awake. I could see everything. And so then I got really nervous. So they laid me down on the bed, and everyone was watching me, and they gave me the warm blanket, and they put my hands at my sides, and then suddenly my hand where the IV was started to burn. And so I asked the doctor, I was like, is it okay that my hand is burning? And then I fell asleep. So the next thing I remember is waking up in the recovery room, and the nurse was very nice, gave me another warm blanket, and she gave me a root beer slushie, and I had to wait forever before they would let me go home. So they finally wheeled me to my mom's car, and we went home, and that week was it hurt pretty bad. But I just got to eat ice cream and popsicles and macaroni and cheese all week, so that was kind of fun. I didn't have to go to work or school, and so I had a relaxing week, even though it hurt pretty bad. But the next week after surgery, I had to go to work. And so I had to stop taking the pain medicine so I could drive. And so I took it Tuesday morning. And then Tuesday night, I noticed that when I talked, that my lip felt kind of funny. And so I looked in the mirror and realized that my lip and part of my cheek wasn't moving like it normally did, like the other side was. So I was a little worried, but I didn't think much about it. And then Wednesday night, so the day after I stopped taking the medicine, I had really weird dreams, and I woke up and my arms were moving and I couldn't stop them moving, and I sat up in bed and I walked around and I still couldn't keep my arms from moving, and I was thinking really weird things, and I finally fell asleep, and I only slept for like an hour that night. And so the next day I told my mom about these weird dreams, and she told me that it was just withdrawals from the pain medication. And then she asked me why I was talking funny and why my lip was being weird. She thought I was faking it. And I told her I didn't know, that it just didn't move. And so I went a couple days and I thought it would get better, but it hadn't. So it just stayed like that. It wouldn't work. So then I thought that maybe the doctor had nicked a nerve and my lip wouldn't work or something. And so this last Tuesday, just a couple days ago, I went into the doctor for my checkup to make sure everything was healing okay. And she said it looked great and that everything was healing perfect, and give it another couple weeks and I would be back to normal. And so then I asked her why my lip wasn't moving, and she told me that it had nothing to do with the surgery, that they hadn't clipped a nerve or anything. And so she pinched and poked and prodded my face for like 5 minutes, and finally decided that because of the stress that I had been under for having the surgery, the stress that my body was under, I had contracted a virus. And that virus had resulted in me getting Bell's palsy. So now this side of my face doesn't work like the other side does. So if the doctor's right, hopefully it'll go away in the next couple weeks. If not, then I guess my lip just doesn't work anymore. But that's my story about me getting my tonsils out. Thank you for listening.